Could you state your full name and job title, please, for the record, and take either an oath or an affirmation?
My name is PATRICIA FERNANDEZ. I'm the Secretary of the Meat Workers Union of the Australasian Meat Industry Employers Union New South Wales branch, better known as the Meat Workers Union.
Okay. And would you like to take an oath or an affirmation?
Yes, I've got an affirmation. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. And would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, I would like to make a very brief statement, although having been sitting here since early this morning, being the last speaker, hopefully in defence of my industry, which is much maligned.
Well, you're not the last speaker.
No, Patricia. Patricia, you have the floor. Take it.
My industry represents a broad range of workers in most parts of New South Wales, but particularly in regional New South Wales. We cover poultry processing, turkey processing, pig processing, cattle processing, sheep processing. We don't do horses, and goats, and certainly some other animals such as, from time to time, alpacas and deer. I have been working for the Meat Workers Union for 25 years, and I've been involved in the industry for 35 years, all up. So I think, I believe I bring some experience to the table about the reality of what goes on in the meat industry. And try, hopefully, to allay some of your fears about what goes on in regards to the terms of references of this inquiry. Having said that, though, obviously, I don't have to address all the terms of references because they don't apply to my industry. But certainly, in the first instance, we uphold, the industry does uphold the utmost of animal welfare, despite of what many people may think. No, people do not go to work in my industry for the sole purpose of being cruel or nasty or kill things. It's an industry, it feeds people, it provides employment, and for most parts in New South Wales is probably the largest employer. And I think when you have inquiries of this nature that may encroach upon an industry which is very misunderstood, because of course, you know, as I always say to people, if any normal person walking into my industry who has never seen an animal being slaughtered for the processing of food is going to see a process that kills an animal. That's the reality. But we do so because we provide food. You know, and it is hard for people like me to sit here and listen to people say, you know, there's a correlation between, you know, cruelty to animals and violence. I would say if you're a violent person, you're a violent person. It wouldn't matter even if you hit a wall and kick it and make a hole in it. You're violent. It's very irrelevant as to who you're violent against. I don't believe anybody in my industry has any higher correlation to being susceptible to being cruel to other things just simply because they work in the industry. I'm sure there's as many people working in this parliament that probably go home and do the wrong thing, you know, so, and they don't have anything to do with killing of animals. I think it's important that when you look at this, there is no movement, you know, when you talk about being cruel to an animal, nobody wants to be cruel to animals. I certainly don't. A majority of my animals have all come from the RSPCA, I dare say, you know, and I believe in rehousing animals. The majority of the people I come across in my industry, I've been very privileged in the way I've probably gone to most abattoirs in Australia, including up in Arnhem Land, all the way down to Tasmania. I've been to abattoirs in America, I've been to abattoirs in New Zealand, so I have a broad understanding of how the processing industry works. So I open up myself for questioning, because I know there's questions, because what I don't want is for people to think that if an animal is chained up and mistreated and not fed and not watered, it is the same thing as an animal who goes up and presents itself for slaughter for the production of food. That's my opening statement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. You want?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ms Fernandez, in your submission, the last,
Yes.
I'm just going to quote the last sentence, the last paragraph, and I want to talk a bit more about that, where you say, we, as in the union, agree that any enforcement agency who investigates and prosecutes any breaches of animal cruelty in the meat industry must not be an agency who is reliant upon charity, donations, membership subscriptions or fundraising. Today, and you've been here most of the day listening to the questions and testimony, responses, you would have heard us talk about the need for an independent office of animal welfare or an independent office, independent advocate, animal advocate, or the like. That statement clearly reflects that view. Can you explain to us just why your industry, your union, feel that we need to move away from charity-based enforcement and go to an independent office arrangement?
Yes, I think that's right, and I stand by those comments. And however, I'm still trying to reconcile in my own head how anything's independent, you know, because no matter where the money comes from is whether you're truly independent, you know. And if you look at family legislation, your kids still fall through the cracks, and they're fully funded, fully independent, with specialist units, and there's still cruelty against children. So we can't kid ourselves and think there is a silver bullet out there that's going to fix all of our problems. But I don't believe that any agency that looks after the welfare of anything should have to rely, that enforces should have to rely on charity. You know, I think that money should go, you know, to the welfare of the animals. I was very taken by the evidence that was given by the Animal Welfare League. I thought he was very good in providing his information, and most of his money doesn't come from the government, from what I heard today. I think that should be their primary role. It should not be about enforcing. It should also not be about giving processes the tick of approval. I'm sorry to say I find that sometimes, you know, for the RSPCA to say that certain products coming out of my industry have got the tick of approval. I don't think that an agency that relies on charity or any funding of what that matter should be doing that. I really don't. You know, I see the ads in the TV where they say we've saved 6 million animals. And I know how many animals we kill in this country, and let me tell you, that wouldn't even constitute a week in the life of an animal. So I think, you know, if we're going to start somewhere, we've got to start with education.
Sorry, can I just take you back a little bit and just ask you to sort of expand a bit on why you don't think a charitable organisation should be having any sort of business agreement with animal product industry?
Because that's not their role. It's like saying that, let's say St Vinny's, you know, St Vincent's goes and gives a tick of approval to Kmart. You know, because they sell clothes. I don't know, like, I just don't think that that's the role of any organisation to say, because it is a very complex thing, you know. Even free range of poultry is very complex. You know, it's about the daylight that the animal sees, whether that constitutes sunlight, whether that constitutes artificial lighting, whether, you know, how many square metres per animal and all of those things. You know,
So would you say that this business arrangement could compromise
I agree, yes.
their function as an inspectorate body, particularly if it came to a complaint about that company?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You know, and look, yeah.
It's just a direct follow-on from this, is that I understand exactly what you're saying, and to the Honourable Mark Pearson, but couldn't it also work in reverse as well, or not in reverse, the other flip of the coin, where as an awareness campaign, you know, the general public feels safe in purchasing a product that has that stamp because they care about the welfare of an animal or the process, I suppose, in particular with your industry from farm to slaughter to, you know, to the supermarket, that they would buy that product because for them that's awareness that obviously there is a process and a check and balance, and they will purchase that product over another because of that approval.
Yeah, no, you see, I see it as a commercial arrangement rather than a purely...
In your industry...
you know...
I suppose a question to you, Patricia, for your particular industry you represent, does money obviously change hands in
I
the
believe
sense
so. I can stand corrected, but I believe
to
so.
get that approval, to get
I
that
believe
tick?
that there's a fee attached to that.
Would you,
I
sorry,
believe there's a fee attached
Patricia,
to that.
would you,
But I stand corrected. If I'm wrong, I apologise to the agency.
yeah, sorry, Patricia, would you prefer that any of those sort of commentaries about the quality of food and where it's come from and how it's killed come from, I guess, an industry-based organisation like the MSA with the Meat Standards Authority? Would you prefer that they have the responsibility of making those comments as opposed to a
Probably
charity?
be a tripartite system. You know, I believe it should be an organisation that's made up of, you know, the processors, the farmers, the unions, the government, and all of that can do inspections. We're the best people served. We know our industry. We walk into our industry every single day of our working life. We know exactly how it operates. In all my years in the industry, I worked for 10 years in the industry before I came to work for the union. I never saw anybody from the RSPCA or any other agency for that matter come in and have a look. You know, you had AQUAS, which is, you know, about food safety and all of that stuff, obviously. You had your vets come in, there's no question, but they're usually employed by the employer, they're not independent. I'm not saying that they don't do a great job, because I've never seen vets do the wrong thing in my industry, but I'm just saying, I just think the RSPCA, the hen people that were here before, sorry if I got the wrong name.
Would you say that's because
should just
they trust
be
your industry?
about animal welfare, pardon?
Would you say that's probably because they trust your industry and your standards and procedures? And that's
Who?
why the RSPCA and other organisations, there was no need that they haven't gone into your establishments.
I don't think there should be a bashing from the union on the RSPCA.
No, I'm
it wouldn't
not
matter.
bashing- I'm not bashing anyone. You
It
made a
wouldn't
comment.
matter.
I was
It
just
wouldn't matter
asking.
who they were. But I'll give you an example.
No, what I was saying is, do you feel that that's probably why they haven't gone there, because they trust your industry and your procedures?
But how could you? Well, it's not an issue about trust. It's an issue that you should have all the checks and balances to ensure that if something
But that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting at.
gets the
That's
trick of
exactly what I'm getting at.
gets the tick of approval, that you go there and have a look. You talk to the workers. Wouldn't you talk to the workers? Wouldn't you go to a kill floor and say, well, your employer has applied to get the tick of approval from the RSPCA. We would like to talk to you about your processes. Have you been trained? Have you done this? I would think that would be a very conceivable thing to do. I've never had one worker tell me that anybody ever asked them.
So, Patricia, considering your opening statement where you spoke about how you've been overseas, you've been to the US, you've been in New Zealand, how do you respond to the previous witness's testimony that, you know, all animal-based industry is exploitation? Seeing what you see in the US and seeing what you see in New Zealand, and compared to what you've lived and breathed for, you know, decades, how do you respond to such a statement?
It hurts. It hurts that my industry is so maligned. It hurts that we are seen as an industry that, you know, a cow presents itself and we exploit it. You know, that's not the reality. That's not the truth. I understand why people come to that conclusion, but it comes from a position of not understanding the industry. As I said in my opening statement, a normal person who has never seen anything in the industry would walk into a knocking box where we knock the animal and would go, oh my God, that's barbaric, you know. That's the reality, but you have to, you know, you have to do that in order to kill the animal. You have to knock them, you have to make them unconscious, just like when you go to hospital and you lay on the table and the anaesthetist says to you, start counting 100 down, and then you don't know anything. And the next thing you know, you wake up. Well, in this case, you don't wake up.
Just picking up on that point.
Yeah.
And I note your comments in your opening statement and the feelings that the industry has about feeling, I guess, persecuted in some ways. Obviously, there are those people who feel that animals just shouldn't be eaten or killed. This particular inquiry is looking at cruelty.
Yes.
Cruelty is not the same as killing. Cruelty is about unnecessary suffering. I guess I'm asking you to explain how expanding the laws in relation to animal cruelty to cover agriculture would cause such concern for the industry.
Because the people making those decisions have probably never been inside an abattoir, and it might expand this is why I was here today, you know, really when you look at the terms of references and that, you think, you know, this is really about us, but this is my concern, that the concern is that it'll encroach upon my industry, because there will be people who have a vested interest in saying that the killing of any animal, for whatever reason, is cruel. I mean, you've heard it here today. People said, you know, a cow presenting itself for slaughter is, you know, it's barbaric. It's an exploitation of the animal.
But that is outside the terms of reference of the inquiry, and I know that some people were guiding people to and prodding them on questions outside of that, and I understand that may have caused some confusion for anyone witnessing that. Can I just sort of take it back to the terms of reference?
Yes. Yeah.
Just because I would like to get your thoughts around how your union, if you've thought about any sort of, in regards to the enforcement of the laws, the current laws as they stand, and whether you think that there is any kind of a better system and how a better system would work for the current laws and just in regards to enforcing them.
Well, I think...
Or if you're happy with the current system.
No, I'm not happy with the current system, because it doesn't necessarily enforce. I'll give you an example, live exports. Let's take it out of processing. Let's look at something that's nothing to do with processing. Live export is the most barbaric and cruel. Nobody would ever say it's not cruel. If the RSPCA is the enforcer, why haven't they stopped it? They should have stopped it. Why hasn't it been stopped? I have flyers here that I've been sitting there all day looking at, and all it says is stop the suffering and long-haul live exports. Well, if you're the enforcer, you should be able to say, no, that ship is not getting loaded, these animals aren't coming here, we're the enforcer, it stops here. Why hasn't that happened? That's my concern. So I do have some sympathy for some of the stuff that's been said today, and that is that, you know, the RSPCA may have the enforcement right, but rarely maybe exercise it. And live export is a perfect example of that. There's absolutely no need to export animals live, especially on a ship. You have an agency here that can stop it, and they haven't done so.
But what do you think a better
Fernandez,
system would be?
would you welcome, in terms of enforcing the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which permits killing of animals for the purposes of causing food for human consumption. So the exemption's already there, it's not in question, as long as the animals are killed humanely. And of course, and that's the issue of enforcement. And as you said, you haven't seen any regulatory authority come to almost any abattoir to check these things.
Not to my knowledge. And
so would you welcome a body like the police or officers under an independent officer of animal welfare to have more interest in abattoirs, to visit spot inspections, for example, or have an agreement for CCTV cameras over the critical points of animal welfare? Would that be a welcome?
You'll find that we already have those things. We do have cameras.
Yes, I thought they might, but they're not mandatory, are they?
Well, they're not mandatory, but the majority of abattoirs would have cameras. I mean, I think there's a misnomer of thinking the majority of them have.
Yeah.
They're just not accessible to you, but they have them there.
Who are they accessible to?
Well, they're
The
certainly
recordings.
accessible to us if
Not
we
the Food
ask
Authority?
for them. Oh well, I don't know. I wouldn't know about the Food Authority, but I mean, if you think back at there was that issue with the turkeys at Ingham's, at the Tamil plant, and there was footage of that was exposed. Well, there's cameras there now. I can tell you that for a fact because I've looked at them myself, where it's directly line, you know, and no
so does
more.
that make you the Australian Meat Workers Union? Does that make you more confident that there won't be that will help sort of dissolve this notion that these are places that people would think are terrible places or whatever? So if there's a monitoring, if there's a transparency of abattoirs via the cameras, via spot inspections by whatever authority, would that make the industry feel more confident?
Mr. Chair, this is not part of the that's not in the terms.
The terms of reference is about enforcement.
Yeah,
and
look-
this is about enforcement.
Look, they've got cameras out to stop you from using your mobile phone. I still see every day people using mobile phones. that's not, I think what you need is education. You need internal education, you need external education. You need internal education to ensure that the people that carry out those tasks of killing an animal for processing understand how to kill them and kill them properly and kill them humanely and kill them with the utmost of welfare. I believe that the majority, the overwhelming majority of the industry today does so, you know, and the few examples that we've had have been shocking, have been extremely upsetting, and have been dealt with swiftly, not always correctly in the terms of, you know, there was no prosecutions. Again, those people, when they went to court, evidence wasn't given, you know. We certainly did not ask for them to be reinstated. We never ran any cases against the people who were guilty of that horrific behaviour. We uphold welfare and we do not protect people who take any cruelty to an animal. Look, I don't know that, you know, do you know how hard it would be for a police officer to walk into an abattoir and determine whether there's cruelty? Like you just, like, I just don't think anybody really understands. Like what, somebody says today at 10 o'clock, cow 234 was, you know, by the time the police came, that animal's in a box. Like, that's
so
the
therefore,
reality.
would you agree that part of enforcement would be to have, because if what you're talking about in terms of detecting whether there are breaches of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is behaviour in an abattoir. In other places, it's how animals are housed or not treated for given veterinary treatment, etc. But in an abattoir, it's activity of slaughter, of killing. And therefore, you're right, if an inspector knocks on the door, then the whistle blows, everybody knows the inspector's there. So if it is a behaviour issue, it's quickly rectified. But if part of the enforcement in such situations as abattoirs where it's a behaviour issue, if there's going to be anything at all by the workers against the animals or each other for that matter, that it is detected. It's a different type of enforcement and surveillance that's required.
But there already is surveillance. I mean, the issue is that I think people like yourselves from the Animal Justice Party and that think that should be made available to you. And we say that, well, that's the reality. Maybe not you personally, but, you know, encroaching on our industry doesn't help our industry either. Doing the things, getting people to go into our industries in the middle of the night and exposing yourself to zoonotic diseases is not good either, or biosecurity breaches.
And that's actually not. So are there any other questions in relation to the terms of reference? Mr. Bell's, yeah.
You know, in terms of enforcement, there's been a lot of assumptive statements in submissions that because, you know, a prosecution doesn't come to fruition, then somehow the system is failing. So in your view, and using your example where some of these, I guess, people that did the wrong thing in the industry went forward to court, but it fell down at court. Do you see the issue with prosecution being at that court level? Is that where you think the majority of these issues fall down, or is it falling down at the RSPCA and AWL level in terms of how they investigate?
I think it's like any court case, you know. It's based on the evidence and on the judge or magistrate listening to the evidence and then making a decision based upon that. And, you know, we've seen plenty of cases got nothing to do with animals where people, you know, from my own experience, my father was killed by a drunk driver. The guy got 15 months, you know. Do I think that was right? No. But that's what the justice system decided.
But you don't blame the police for that.
No, I don't blame the police. I think the police did a fantastic job. At the end of the day, you're at the mercy of somebody sitting behind who doesn't know us, doesn't know my family, doesn't know the impact that had on my family. Made a decision. That's it.
So you can't fully shift the blame of, you know, failings of the POC Director on the investigation.
To educate people, and we've got to move away from this issue that killing an animal is cruel. You know, killing an animal isn't cruel. Treating animals with cruelty, like I heard today about puppy farms, I'm completely against puppy farms. It's disgusting. The breeding of dogs is disgusting. You know, like you can now get a dog about that size. It looks like a rat. You know, what do the people think's going to happen? You know, like that's wrong. The stuff about cats, you know, I've got 130 acres at Wiseman's Ferry. Cats are a pest. They're vermin.
Just need to come back to the topic. So are there any more questions?
Yes.
How quickly are they trying to make
So Miss-
Here.
Yes.
I've got 20
Fernandez?
minutes.
No, I really appreciate your evidence. It's actually been quite helpful.
Can I ask a question?
Miss Abigail
Visible
Boyd
to you today.
is going to ask you the last question.
You know, just sort of thinking about the reluctance of industry to open itself up to external regulation. You know, the job of parliaments is to make laws that balance competing interests in society, and to apply those across society. I guess what I'm struggling to see here is why your industry in particular should be exempt from the laws that society as a whole wants to make. I understand the fear of those laws ending up being extreme, but in the ordinary course, I can't see how that would occur. Why the reluctance?
No, there's no reluctance. I'm saying there is any cruelty in my industry. It should be dealt with swiftly and accordingly. That's what I don't take away from that. I don't shy away from any aspects of animal cruelty in my industry, however they come, should be dealt with swiftly and properly and with the full force of the law.
Just check with things.
If I misled you, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm saying.
Trying to understand.
But what I'm saying is the problem that you have is that when people go into the industry, you know, I've been in the industry 35 years and still today I still learn stuff. It's not that simple to see an animal die and be processed and opened up and all of that stuff and have an understanding as to whether that is cruel or isn't cruel. That's my fear. My fear is that, yes, we should be, we should be regulated, go back maybe having, vets, independent vets, for the government to fund vets at every abattoir, where they can oversee stuff like all that was taken, all that was taken with fund cuts and funding cuts and all this stuff. So
there are certain practices that have been in farming for a long time, and over time we've seen changes in those practices as a result of cost efficiencies, or because the market is kind of, consumer preferences are pushing things in a particular way. Are there any examples you can think of where industry has changed the way it does things purely because it has the ability to do something in a more humane way?
yes, the gassing of poultry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a great believer of gassing poultry. The systems of gassing poultry are extremely humane. I know I've spoken to people around this table about this before. Every time I've watched it, it's done because, poultry is bred to a certain, they are bred to a certain size. It is it's been genetically modified now for, I shouldn't say genetically modified, but the genes of the animals today come from, I think the cock and the hen, that all the poultry that is killed in Australia today comes from one hen and one cock. I think it was, maybe 80 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All the animals are left meat.
What about the gas stunning of pigs?
So the gas, it's extremely humane. I've seen it this is, so I'll give you a picture. So for poultry, they go into chambers. So, the stuff that was said before about how they stay in there, that's not, I've never seen what they've said, that for days they stay in a cage. Poultry is very susceptible to climate change. So a degree change in that, they will just die. So they get picked up and within hours they're processed.
Did they used to just break the necks? Was that
No.
How did they
I've been
used
in
to
the
do it
industry
beforehand?
35 years. They used to get stunned. So they used to get an electric shock. So it stuns them. And then they get their throat cut. So the animal is unconscious when it's killed.
Is the gassing?
Of course, you'll see blood.
Is the gassing of the poultry also cheaper and quicker than the old process?
Well, I can't answer that, and I don't even think I can take it on notice because I don't think the industry would give me that information. I just think, having come out of the poultry industry, to me, it is the most humane way. Now, pigs, again, you have to understand that the mass production of pigs in Australia is, again, you get very well confirmed animals. So you get very similar size animal. You don't get one that's 90 kilos and another one that's 65 kilos. You get very well conformed animals. They go in a gondola, they get put down, they get CO2, they faint. They come back up, they're on their side, they get hung, they get their throats cut. No pain. Now, I think you mentioned to me before what happens if they wake up. Well, they go back down the gondola. It's as simple as that. No one is going to pick up a pig that's half alive, you know. They're not also going to pick up cattle that's half alive, you know, because you get kicked. That's
so
the reality.
I have to wind us back to the terms of reference. Are there any further questions at all?
No, but this has been very interesting.
Okay.
I tell you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fernandez. It's been
I've
very
still got
helpful.
15 minutes.
Does, and
Well, we're actually thinking of moving on to the next witnesses a bit
I'm
earlier. We're going
still
to
here.
clear the room.
Abigail's got
hello.
some questions.
Keep it close to the terms of reference. Thank you.
I believe that I am. But thank you. Just, sorry, back to my question that I asked before.
Yeah, so-
what I'm curious to know is, has there been a change in practice in the industry purely to make things more humane rather than for cost or efficiency purposes?
Oh, certainly. You know, cattle, when I first came into the industry, used to get shot with a 22.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Somebody would stand there and shoot them with a 22. You don't do that anymore. It's a retractable bolt. So it's very humane. The animal comes up the race, you know, within seconds. This is very quick. Within seconds, gets a retractable bolt to the head. Instant, you know, brain, you know, feel nothing, and then they get hung and get their throats cut. Absolutely, there's very different. The gassing of poultry, as I said earlier, the gassing of pigs, as I said earlier. There's a lot of animals that's very difficult. Goats are difficult animals to process because, you know, they jump and stuff like that. But I think the industry is consistently looking at better ways to be on the way, you know, efficient at the same time to apply animal welfare. The more the animal, the more the animal like hits itself against a rail before it gets killed, it affects the product. It affects the meat. So of course it is about animal welfare, and it's also about that. So the employers, it wants the animal to be calm. The races to be built in a way. I think now you're starting to see circular races rather than straight races going up because there's a scientific belief. I don't know. I'm not a cow, but if they go around in a circle, they tend to be calmer because they can't see around corners and stuff like that. So you're starting to see new abattoirs now designed where they'll have a circular race leading the animals up to the knocking box, what we call a knocking box. So I mean, nobody wants an animal to be kicking and screaming and all of that stuff because, you know, it's no good for the animals, no good for the workers, it's not good for the company at the end, and it's not good for the meat you're going to eat. Poultry, for instance, I heard before, you know, about the breaking of the bones and that. You know, you'll know. This is the part, when you get a chook from a processing farm and you get a chook from a free-range farm, you will notice that there's more blood stains on the free-range than there is on the mass-produced, and that's because there's a lot more hitting of the animal, not human hitting, but there's a lot more, and they bleed, and that's what happens. So you know. So look, this is all stuff, and this is what I say. If you really want to know, you need people like us to talk to. You know, what gets me is I've never been called by the RSPCA. I've never been called by the Animal Welfare League. I've never been called by the lady that was here before about anything. You know, I've said if there is an issue about cruelty, if somebody whistleblows, and I'm all for whistleblowers, I've got nothing against whistleblowers, I think they should be protected to the utmost. If people genuinely have something to say and it's true and it's based on fact, they should be allowed to say it and be free to say it without any retribution. And whatever recommendations you guys make should have that. Why aren't they calling us? Because, you know, we can get into a workplace immediately. Like, you guys have to go through all this, you know, get in at night with torches and all of that. If you ring us and you say, we heard that the abattoir over at wherever, we got a call from workers there, they're saying they're doing the wrong thing. I'll send my people out immediately. You know, like, that's what should be happening, rather than this whole thing, everybody's got competing interests. Everybody wants to be the one that does the right thing. Well, we are the experts. We're the ones that are in the coalface of what happens in my industry.
Thank you very much.
Yes, all right, you can let me go, Mr.
Well done.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you. Very informative and helpful. Thank you.
And you're going to eat meat tonight, Mr.
And entertaining.
Pearson.